Thank you for tuning in again today. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Apologize very much for not being able to put anything up for a while here. Life did intrude for a bit, unfortunately, and I'm trying to get back to doing some things every now and then whenever I can. But today, all I wanted to really do was review a movie, Evil Dead Rise. And there are certain things you need for an Evil Dead movie. One of the most glaring things you need is Bruce Campbell. Well, this movie doesn't have Bruce Campbell per se. It does have an audio cameo by him. You only hear him for a brief moment as a voice on a recording. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it thing, or if you're crunching on your popcorn, you'll drown it out. But it happens fairly early in the movie. The other things you really need, of course, tons of blood. And this movie has it in spades. You need deadites, of course, which this movie does have quite a few. A chainsaw, which this movie does have. Although, spoiler alert, nobody loses their hand in this one to require a chainsaw. That requires the chainsaw, anyway. Or that uses the chainsaw, I should say. There are people that definitely lose their hands, but not the person who wields the chainsaw, per se. But anyway, in this movie, you have starring Elisa Sutherland as Ellie and Lily Sullivan as Beth. Lily Sullivan is in the movie, and again, spoiler alerts for people who haven't seen it yet, finds out that she is pregnant, and she goes to talk to her sister, Ellie. Now, Ellie is recently separated from her husband, and she has 3 kids. She has the children are played by Gabrielle, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, Choles or Coles, who plays Bridget, Morgan Davis, who plays Danny, and Nell Fisher, who plays Cassie. And the movie is directed by Lee Cronin. And anyway, she goes to visit her sister in their apartment, which is on the verge of being condemned, and to what I assume is to seek help in raising the child or going through the pregnancy, or whatever. And her sister, Ellie, who already has 3 kids, seems to be, the person to go to. So she goes to talk to Ellie, and during the conversation with Ellie, she sends her 2 eldest children to go get pizza. And during their excursion to get pizza, an earthquake hits. Now, bear in mind, I think this is supposed to be set in California, if I'm not mistaken, so they have an earthquake. And it's actually, I think it was actually shot in New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. The 2 main actresses are New Zealand actresses, who they do hide their accents fairly well, although every now and then a word will slip through, but for the most part they cover it well. And the kids, after the earthquake hits, they discover that their apartment building sits on top of a abandoned bank, or it was built on top of an abandoned bank, which still has the safe in it and still has several items in it, including the Book of the Dead and a couple of recordings on vinyl. And so the bank, the recordings and everything was made presumably, I think it says sometime in the 20s. And in the audio, when they played the records, when the eldest brother plays the records, there's voices on there, and one of the voices is Bruce Campbell, and I believe his line is, "It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason." But they're another religious group wants to translate it, and the second recording that the boy plays is the translations from the Book of the Dead, which, of course, as we all know who are Evil Dead fans, releases the Deadites. And the first person to get possessed is their mother. Now, I'm not going to go into any more details about who gets possessed, who doesn't get possessed, what happens. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that. But what I can say, it's a very good movie. The woman who plays Ellie, Elisa Sutherland, does a very good job. There's the original poster there, as you can see. After she gets possessed, and you can see on her hand there is a tattoo of a vine, which is a callback to the original Evil Dead. And she kind of has an encounter with I don't know, vines in general, but electrical wires, but they act like the vines in the original movie. So she kind of has that encounter, and the one thing you see here is the fly landing on the eyeball, and that was a really creepy scene. For anybody that's seen it, they know. After she gets possessed, Ellie appears to die, and she's laying on the bed with her eyes wide open, and a fly lands on her eyeball, and it just sits there with her eyes open, and of course it's a CG fly. I don't know of anybody that could hold their eye open while a fly crawls on it, but then she blinks and the fly flies away. But it's a very good movie, very bloody, which is good, very good for an Evil Dead movie. The ending seemed to me to be a little forced, I guess you could say. It's telegraphed way in advance. And for anybody that's seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So, there's an object that is seen early in the movie that is utilized in the conclusion. At the beginning of the movie, we're gonna jump back to the beginning of the movie for another thing that usually you need in an Evil Dead movie, and that is the cabin in the woods. And this movie does have a cabin in the woods, but it's kind of a red herring, a misdirect, you could say. At the beginning of the movie, there is a cabin in the woods, and you see a classic something flying through the woods scene in like the original Evil Dead and the second Evil Dead. You see the something flying through the woods, and it turns out to be a drone, which in the original Evil Deads 1 and 2, if you recall, fans of the movie will know that the way they accomplished this in those movies was they tied a camera to a 2x4 and they ran it through the woods. And that's how they got that original camera run. And on this one, it's a drone, and in my opinion, it looked really good. I mean, a drone can do some pretty wild things that a person holding on to a 2x4 couldn't do. So I thought it was pretty cool. And so then we jump to the cabin in the woods where somebody, they're talking about a person who's not doing too well, or they think they're on drugs or something like that. And of course we find out that is not the case in a spectacularly bloody way, which leads to the title card of Evil Dead Rise. It pops up in the background, Evil Dead Rise. And then we jump to the events that happen at the high rise. And later on in the movie, you find out that the beginning of the movie is actually the end of the movie, more or less. And you find out why right at the very end. We do a little time jump thing happens. But for anybody who has not yet watched Evil Dead Rise, I highly recommend it. It is very good. I know some people are like, if there's no Bruce Campbell in it, forget it. It's not Evil Dead. And I understand the argument. Believe me, I do. But it's actually a pretty good movie if you like, bloody, gory movies. And Bruce Campbell, I think he was a producer on the movie, and I think Sam Raimi was also a producer on the movie. So I believe, you could definitely feel their influence in the movie for sure. But there's a few little nods and homages to the to what the original movies. You don't get Sam Raimi's car making a cameo, which that should have been a given. That should have been it should have been down in the garage at the very least. The director Lee Cronin said that they used the colors of the car on the chainsaw that is used in the movie, but it's not the same. Evil Dead fans, they expect certain things, and going in, we knew we weren't going to get Bruce Campbell. We suspected we'd get a tiny little cameo or something, and the voice cameo is all we got. But you should have thrown in a few things here and there for the hardcore fans, for sure. Definitely should have put the classic in there. You should have put the car in there in the garage, in the parking garage. It should have made an appearance. But you got the chainsaw, you got the cabin in the woods, you got the deadites, you got the blood flying everywhere. So you do get a lot of what makes an Evil Dead movie an Evil Dead movie. For those of you out there who, can't get over the whole Bruce Campbell not being in it, I understand. I definitely understand. If that's the main staying point for you, then I understand you not wanting to watch it. Definitely do. For anybody else, give it a try. I thought it was fairly good. It was really good in my opinion. I love blood splatter. I love practical effects. There are very few. And if they're not practical, you can't really tell they're not. But there's very little CGI in the movie, as far as I can tell. Most of it is done practical, which is a great thing, and something that is sorely missed by me and a lot of other horror fans is just the practical stuff. Why would you use CGI blood in a movie? It's silly. It doesn't look good. It takes people out of the movie. It doesn't have the same look, feel, or anything like that. And it just flies across the screen. It doesn't land on anybody or anything, and you can just tell it's fake. And as horror fans, we don't really like that. We understand that it's a cost-saving measure, although it takes a couple of people. It doesn't take much for somebody to make a bucket of blood. It takes some food coloring and some the formula, whatever they use to make it, the physical blood. But if you're doing it on a computer, it takes a team of people to do it, and you got to pay that whole team of people. Whereas with practical, there's only a couple people that make it, so it probably wouldn't take as much time for it to get done. And that's the one. Again, that's the one thing a lot of horror fans really love is practical effects. We're always seeking out movies that use a lot of practical effects. We go back and watch older movies that use practical effects. And that's the movies that we love. And, if the movie is a CGI monster fest, then, we expect CGI everything. So it's understandable that, if you don't like CGI effects, you'll like this movie. But again, I highly recommend it for anybody that has not yet went out and watched it. Highly recommend. It's a fun time. It's a fun movie. For anybody that again, if your staying point is Bruce Campbell not being in it, and you don't want to watch an Evil Dead movie without Bruce Campbell, I understand. But I just like horror movies. I like all horror movies. Well, not all horror movies, but I love horror movies. And if it's got practical effects in it, I love it. It would have been a lot better with a cameo by Bruce Campbell, where he just pops up at the end or something. But now there is something that is brewing, from my understanding, for anybody that likes horror movies and gets tries to find a few behind the scenes things and people talking about things. Something seems to be brewing, and I'm not sure if anybody else noticed it or not, or how many people noticed it. I've heard a few people say something about it. But during the time when they're listening to the recordings, it's mentioned that there are 3 books of the dead. Now, what I'm assuming is that Bruce Campbell's book, the Necronomicon, his book is the original book. The second book is the one from the remake movie they made a few years ago. The third book is the book that they find for this movie. So there's a potential of a big crossover here. Now, it would be interesting to see what would happen if all 3 of the books of the dead were brought together in one big movie. And the surviving people from the remake and this movie come back and team up with Bruce Campbell. From my understanding, from what I have heard, Sam Raimi has expressed an interest in bringing Bruce Campbell back to play Ash. And Bruce Campbell, he said he's retired from doing Ash. He's letting the character go. But he did say the only way he would come back is if Sam Raimi directed it. Now, Sam Raimi has showed an interest, or talked about an interest, in coming back and doing another Evil Dead with Bruce Campbell. Now, that could be the big crossover that happens because of the 3 different books of the dead. And I think that would be a great way to go. Bring in Ash and the other 2 survivors. And you would have to get Ash to make an appearance, so he probably wouldn't appear till about halfway through the movie. So you'd have to get him to do a big main entrance. This is the guy, and he's got to be the same Ash from the movies, the same Ash from Ash vs. Evil Dead. You can't change his character, and definitely don't kill him off. That would be the worst thing you could do to a horror fan. I know a lot of they bring back a classic character and they kill him off, and that's just ignorant and stupid. So that would be a bad thing to do. So just, bring him back. Let him be the Ash that he always has been. Maybe these Deadites are different than his Deadites, and he has to rely on the other, survivors to help him defeat those Deadites, whatever. But that's where you need to go with this, with a new Evil Dead movie if you're going to do a big crossover. That's where it's got to go. Some scientist or evil person or somebody discovers the Books of the Dead and brings them together, and chaos ensues, and the survivors from the other movies come together to defeat it. That would be the best thing to do. But tell me what you think down in the comments down below. Have you watched Evil Dead? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I would appreciate all of you very much for doing that, and thank you so very, very much for watching the video. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.